Virginia 61 years ago. He doubtless had no idea what champions would later tramp his roughly hewn fairways. Neither did foundation member Lad Scott.
We started off 9 holes, and then once we got tired of 9 holes, they struggled on with another 9 and made it 18. You've got no idea the rubbish that was all around. We used to collect the rubbish and try and get rid of it, you know. Old tanks and all people's material they didn't want was all over the place. It was just a real bush.
It may not be Brisbane's most fashionable club, but Virginia's fiercely loyal members wouldn't swap with anyone. They boast a list of champions unrivaled in Queensland. And now, another red-letter day in the history of Virginia Golf Club.
Not just a red-letter day for Virginia, but for Queensland golf. And already thousands have crammed this course to watch the unique event. Hello, I'm Pat Welch, and welcome to a day that will live long in the memories of not only the spectators here at Virginia, but especially in the minds of the 2 rising stars of Queensland golf, Shane Taite and David Podlich. Their opposition, 2 golfers who are already superstars. The world's #1, Greg Norman, and another household name who traces his origins back to Virginia, Wayne Grady. Norman was club champion here in 72 and 73, but in a schedule which includes tournaments at every point of the globe, nostalgia only has a small place, and he hasn't played here since the mid-1980s. Grady, Virginia club champion in 76-77, winner of the 1988 Australian PGA, the 1989 Westchester Classic, the World Cup, and runner-up in this year's British Open. He's home more often than the Shark. Today's event in aid of the Greg Norman Junior Golf Foundation is special, but for Shane Taite and David Podlich, it is the day that will live long in their golfing memory.
Shane Taite, he first held a club at 5 and he's been playing competitively 8 of his 18 years. In that time, he, like Greg Norman, has worked on unleashing a tee shot as if it's been shot from a cannon. But as Norman well knows, remember his drive on the final playoff hole at this year's British Open, being long off the tee can sometimes be troublesome.
Oh, no! He's hit it too far.
Just direction, he hits it miles, he putts, he chips, everything. He's just direction. If he could hit his driver in play all day, it'd be magic. Super golfer.
But if accuracy is the slight blemish in Shane Taite's game, then he makes up for it with surgeon-like touch around the greens. In fact, so well-rounded is the Taite game, the Queensland Golf Union Secretary Bill Kennedy, an astute judge of a young golfer, has rated him 3 shots a better player than Greg Norman at the same age.
Possibly that's correct, but Greg was a late starter. And as you get older, you know, the balance soon becomes evident, I think.
Like Norman, David Podlich was a late starter, but his game has been fine-tuned quickly by veteran Virginia member Vince Maynard, who remains solid friends with the young Lions. Podlich now lives, eats and sleeps golf, playing and practicing constantly and then working at a driving range. Even so, he'll be nervous today.
If we get a chance to talk to him before we tee off, I think it'll make it a lot easier for Shane and I, rather than stepping onto the tee and introducing ourselves on the first tee, and then the nerves will be there if that happens, yeah.
Taite and Podlich are inseparable, and this event is a dream come true. It quite simply is the biggest day of their golfing lives.
I'm going to walk down the 16th. I think about today when I'm coming down 16. Try and relax and come to the practice fair and hit some balls.
I think it's just great to be back, and you know, I got a pleasant surprise coming in here today to see the number of people that really are here, and I think just that's great to see that the people really do still support us and us, and you know, the fact that we come back and think about them is nice too, and to be doing it for the foundation and for the juniors in Queensland, to be getting the benefit of it all and give the young kids out in the countrysides the opportunity to play golf like, you know, everybody else can play, the better players, feels good as well.
I haven't met both Shane and myself. Wayne comes down here often, but Greg, no, we haven't had the opportunity to meet him or let alone play with him. It's going to be nice and nervous on the first tee, but if we get a chance to talk with him beforehand, I'm sure he'll settle us down a bit, yeah.
Mind you, it's going to be a pretty casual day. I think there'll be a lot of ribbing going on out there. I know Herbie Grunow cut in for one of the boys. He'll be really serious and probably won't talk to us much, but we'll fix him up. Do you think he'll beat them? I hope so. We'll cop heaps if we don't.
So the superstars were pleased to be back, and the fans were delighted to have them home. Norman, forever the star turn, no matter how big the event, was first to the tee and was under siege immediately. As the youngsters lined up for their opening tee shots, estimates varied, but it's safe to say that around 12,000 people lined the 470 metres of the first fairway. It brought a lump to the throat of golf administrators in this state. Not since Nicholas and Player in 1971 had we witnessed head-to-head golf on this level in Brisbane, and they'd arrived in droves to admire the blossoming talent of these young lions. They'd also come to pay homage to two of Queensland's most revered international sportsmen, Wayne Grady and Greg Norman. But the Shark quickly showed he is fallible. It was a huge shock when he blocked his opening tee shot and was first to play his second to this opening par 5. The youngsters, both of them fighting a severe bout of nerves, needed some early breaks to settle the butterflies. David Podlich got one with his second shot at the opening hole. The ball ricocheted back towards the green after the long leg of the law had intervened. Grady safely on for 2, then 2-putted for the first of the day's birdies. Podlich needed this one to keep the match at level pegging. It wasn't to be, and the champions led one up. The second hole was halved in par 4s, and that sent this illustrious group to the 168-metre par 3 third. It seemed Shane Taite's nerves still hadn't settled. The teenager, who'd set a new Virginia course record of 68 on Saturday, was having his problems. But he wasn't alone. World Cup champ Wayne Grady thought that the third hole had a goalkeeper fending away his putts. He, like Taite, settled for a double bogey 5. Norman and Podlich had pars. The hole was halved. The champ stayed one up, and Mr. Taite was hoping those butterflies would fly away so he could settle into attacking this course he knows so well.
Yeah, well, Shane started caddying for me when he was about 7 years old. And at school, he was overweight for the football team, and he asked me if I'd teach him how to play. So it sort of went on from there. He showed good potential, and after a couple of years, when he was, say, about 10, I handed him over to Vince Maynard to coach.
Virginia Golf Club is fast nearing its 60th birthday. Many greats have tramped its fairways, but this nursery for would-be champions may never again host a day like this. By the fourth hole, the crowds had wisened to the congestion, and they were sprinting ahead to grab the best vantage points. Those who bypassed the short par 4 missed a superb chip from Podlich to allow the young lions another half, but there was still one down. That was all about to change at the par 5 fifth. So many say that Shane Taite is Greg Norman's mirror image 17 years on. He just loves to stand and deliver. And that's what he did, steering a 2-iron from the left-hand trees to within 12 metres of the 5th pin. And he would be putting for an eagle. The pros were away to the right and just faces in the crowd, while Podlich again displayed the touch of a surgeon when he was within striking distance of the pin. From 100 metres, he also set up birdie. Shane Taite, using his revolutionary horseshoe-style putter, missed the eagle, but the birdie was tonic enough to finally rid him of those annoying butterflies. And much to the delight of locals who'd put a little of their hard-earned on the youngsters, the match was all square. As if stung by the audacity of these teenagers, Norman and Grady made pars at the toughest hole on the course, the 400-metre par 4 6th. Grady, showing anything young Podlich could do, he could do better. And again, they'd snuck away to a one-shot lead. So pleased was the World Cup champion with his efforts that he accommodated the masses and a passing Channel 7 cameraman with autographs.
Stop wrong. Oh, sorry.
It was a credit to both the internationals that the constant backslapping and stoppages for autographs didn't distract them. At the 7th, Grady, still a regular player at Virginia's Thursday club when he's home, produced one of the shots of the day. Meanwhile, Shane Taite was feeling the pressure. This chip was too strong and he took bogey. Podlich was relishing this contest, and never at any stage was he fazed by the lofty company he was keeping. His neat little chip and one putt kept the young lions in touch. They were still only one down. The 355 metres par 4 8th was a definite birdie hole for talents of this calibre, and Norman gave himself best chance. After an awesome drive, this part of his game that thrills crowds around the globe, he put his second to within 2 metres. But again, the putts wouldn't drop for the Shark. The big guns weren't exactly blazing away, but they were grateful for the one-shot lead as the four Pipers and their 12,000 devotees headed away to the par 3 ninth. Grady was at his best here. A 4-iron to 7 metres, and the pin-up boys of Virginia Club threatened to go 2 up. Space was at a premium, but if you were young and agile enough, the nearest Virginia tree provided a vantage point second to none. And they would have relished Tate's reply to the Grady shot. His chip came oh so close to dropping. It was enough to ensure the hole was halved, and the spectators headed away for a halfway drink in humid conditions. Norman and Grady 1 up, and Wayne's father, Des, who was in this melee somewhere, would have approved at the career choice his #1 son had made all those years ago.
Yeah, well, the big beginnings, you know, it started at Redcliffe, actually, from probably Redcliffe High School. He began to play with me in a social club and then joined Redcliffe Golf Club. And spent a few years there before we moved over this side of town, and he joined Virginia and started to play there as in the reserve grade pennants and as a junior. And Greg at that stage was in the senior pennant team, and they had a couple of years difference in age, and Greg was always that little further advanced than Wayne. And of course he's tried to make that up over the years, but he spent most of his playing time at Virginia leading up to turning professional.
Playing a couple of kids, I think it'd be like me fighting Mike Tyson, actually. That's how much chance I give the kids, but oh, they'll be in there trying and they'll be doing their best, and I hope they surprise me.
Hardly inspirational words of encouragement from Ivan Tate before the event, but by the time the most watched foursome in many a long year in Brisbane golf had slowly forged their way through the throng and onto the back nine, there were plenty of those doubters who'd believed the youngsters would be blown off the course, eating their words. 10, 11 and 12 were all halved. The young Lions had left the nerves well and truly behind. Norman and Grady wore slightly worried frowns that this wasn't as easy as it should have been. But the Shark had an excuse.
No, not at all. It's Monday. We don't work on Mondays. We're just having a good time, and it's great to see a number of people out here and trying to make them enjoy it as much as they can. And it really doesn't matter who wins as long as we do the right thing by everybody.
And if the thousands didn't quite believe that one, well then, the World Cup champion had a theory to explain why these teenagers hadn't been taught a lesson by this point.
Fairways, I mean, the fairways look about 6 yards wide, but it's a lot of fun. We just hope no one gets hurt, which it's, you know, quite possible on a day like this. But I think it's a great day. I think, you know, the people that have come out, thanks very much to them, and we're having a lot of fun. Pity we're not making any more birdies, but we're having a lot of fun.
How are the nerves now, Taite? Oh, they're all right now. It's taken about 9 holes, but she's right.
Do you reckon you can still take them?
At the moment, yes.
You got Greg, I noticed, on the 11th with the long drive. You must have been pleased with that.
Yeah, he's not that strong, is he? Not as far as everyone thinks.
Well, Potty, so far your driving hasn't been so great, but you're getting it up and down magnificently.
I don't know why I haven't been chipping that well lately, but today it's all happening. I've been driving it all right recently, but not today. I don't know what I'm doing.
What about this gallery? Is it putting you off at all?
No, not at all, really. They're all pretty good.
They're brash, these kids. Tate actually outdrove the mighty Norman at the 11th, and this 300-metre-plus monster wasn't the only time today he left the Shark in his wake. And if Grady's trap shot back at 7 had thrilled the crowds, well, this one from Podlich had them in raptures. It ensured the par, another half, and Norman and Grady stayed 1 up. The par 3 12th passed without incident, although Grady frightened the life out of his opponents as this one closed in for birdie. But that goalkeeper was at it again. Grady threw down the gauntlet at the par 5 13th with a birdie. Podlich had the perfect reply. A marvellous little Texas wedge ensured he too posted red figures on the scoreboard, and it was déjà vu as far as the team score went. So to the 14th. Incredibly, the Shark still hasn't snared a birdie. That was about to change, and so was the complexion of this thrilling head-to-head contest. From the left edge of the green, and with the bulk of the crowd waiting up the 14th, Norman strutted his stuff. So the boys who dominated Virginia's club championships in the 70s slipped at 2 up. The Shark had relaxed, and perhaps that was ominous. he nailed a 5-iron 155 metres into the par 4 15th to set up another birdie chance. But before standing over the putt, he went ahead and made Taite and Podlich's day. The world's #1 golfer, the man who counts his spare hours in a week on his fingers, stopped the Virginia sideshow to dispense some advice that Messrs Taite and Podlich will never forget. Shane Taite especially listened as if his very life depended on it, and then pleased his mentor by immediately putting the theory into practice. Watch this.
Shot, Shane, yeah.
But by now the shark was closing in. The lesson was all well and good, but there was a match to be won, a reputation to keep intact, and he calmly potted his second straight birdie. The scoreboard read, Norman and Grady now 3 up, and Tony Norman could breathe a little easier.
Well, when we were playing in Virginia and Greg was on holidays from school and he said, I'll come and caddy for you, Mum, and that's how it started. And then John Clatt had the junior clinics every Saturday morning, and that Greg went to those, and that's how.
Did he show a lot of promise?
Well, I don't think at first, but I think it didn't take him long because he was so determined. He practiced a lot and he liked to be down there all the time.
And playing his first Brisbane tournament since 1983 drew the crowds like moths to a light. The fact that he'd just knocked in back-to-back birdies had them buzzing. The youngsters needed a stroke of luck to charge back into this match. Shane Taite, whose family home backs onto the 16th tee, wasn't about to be smiled upon by the golfing gods, though. This is where his tee shot landed at the longest of Virginia's par 5s. And his next didn't fare much better. David Podlich will also have nightmares about the 16th. He too needed a plumber. Wayne Grady wasn't about to show the teenagers any mercy. He was on in regulation 3 and made sure of his 2 putts. Norman too would make his par after an errant second, and that was enough to put the match beyond the reach of Taite and Podlich. The professionals had dashed quickly to 4 up. Perhaps interest had gone from the contest, but not a soul had left Virginia early. Every man, woman and child was engrossed, and like the teenagers, they were hoping for a miracle. There were signs of it at 17. Wayne Grady had gone walkabout in search of baby daughter Sam. Finally, he tracked her down and she was given a ringside seat to the putt of the day. David Podlich from the back of the 17th, this monster for a birdie and a chance to eat away, albeit belatedly at the pros' lead. Podlich and Taite were never going to make up the 3-shot leeway on the short par 5 18th. But the crowd was still hungry for birdies, and they weren't disappointed. Grady, after a brilliant 1-iron from the fairway, made sure of his 2 putts for a birdie 4. David Podlich would finish on a high, also neatly putting away his second putt for a birdie 4. All that remained was for the statisticians to record whether the final difference would be 3 or 4 shots. Norman needed this little one for an eagle 3. Officially, the final scoreboard read, Norman and Grady winners, 3 up. But there was much more to come. The pandemonium which followed was reminiscent of the final hole of a British Open. The crowd surged, not through anger, but through a desire to meet, shake hands, or just be near 4 golfers who'd given them the best $5 entertainment they'll get anywhere. For Norman, the job wasn't over yet. His usual after-match routine, first the press conference with his partners alongside. Then to the presentation area, and it was fortunate that he, Taite, Podlich and Grady weren't claustrophobic. But the cause was a good one. Thousands of dollars had been raised for the Greg Norman Junior Golf Foundation. $2,000 of that was passed on to Wayne Grady to help in his tireless work for the Down Syndrome Foundation. And there were the obligatory photographs. Hundreds of people work behind the scenes putting days like this together, and Greg likes to thank as many as his schedule allows. So the fans left happy. For most, it was their first close-up look at golfers of this calibre. But what of the central players? What did they think of this battle of origin?
I've got a lot of things to work on, but I'd just like to thank Wayne and Greg very much. We appreciate it the utmost. And I'd like to wish them best of luck in the Australian Open, which they're flying down to now. And we've got to let these guys go. Thank you.
Greg, I know you've got to go shortly. You've got a chopper waiting for you, but a quick word about the 2 young blokes.
Well, you know, I think it's very impressive to come out and do what they did today is pretty pretty hard to do. You know, when you're trying to fire down the first fairway, when it's lined with people, it's intimidating for us. And we've been out there for a long time doing it, but you got to respect them for doing it. It's hard to pull the trigger sometimes, and you know, they got a lot of talent. Both of them have got a lot of talent. They got a lot to work on, of course. And the age of 18, they got plenty of time to do it. But you know, I think they've got a lot of desire. Both of them want to be the best they can, and as long as they have that attitude, they will be.
Does Shane remind you of yourself about 10 or 15 years ago?
Well, both of them do, basically. They get up there and hit it as hard as they can, and, you know, they don't care where it goes, basically. They'd like to hit it on the fairway as much as they can, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But I think it's good. I always learned to hit the ball as hard as I could and as far as I could, and then learned to hit the ball straight. And, you know, I can see shades of that 16 years ago.
And let's not forget the World Cup champion over here. Is this a little better than Las Breezes?
Yeah, a little drier, thank goodness, although it didn't look that way at the start while we were out there practicing. But we've had an enjoyable day.
Must have been hard, actually, concentrating on golf when you're out there, because you had a driving range of about 6 metres wide.
Yes, you've got to hit it pretty good out there on that range. Probably we should practice in that more often. We'd have to concentrate a little bit harder.
Well, of course, it's all for junior golf, and it was a great success, Grades. Would you like to see more things like this staged in Brisbane?
Yeah, you know, if you do too many things and then you're going to lose the appeal, I think this was a very good thing today, and you know, something like this every year would be great.
Greg Norman is now back in Melbourne to start his preparation for this week's Australian Open. Wayne Grady is at a Brisbane function. Shane Taite and David Podlich are in a jet en route to Melbourne. And the 12,000 fans, well, you're at home resting weary feet, harbouring fond memories of one of the greatest days Queensland golf has ever witnessed.